All right, hello everybody, and as always, welcome back. I'm sorry this is my first video in a long time. I was dealing with some life stuff and balancing work with that made it really hard to make time to create content. But I am hoping to get these videos very regular again. So for today, we're going to be talking about a very highly discussed topic, which is veterinary technician wages. This is a video that I've gotten a couple requests to make for people that are either entering the field or looking to enter the field and are concerned about what their potential earnings are going to be like. Your earning potential as a veterinary technician is going to vary greatly based on the state you're living in, the area you're living in, and the type of practice that you're entering. So general practice in a really rural area that sees mostly mixed animal practice, doesn't do a lot of emergency specialty medicine, is going to be paying you less than an emergency specialty clinic that's highly specialized in a large city where cost of living is higher. In addition, your wage is going to vary greatly upon your experience, your years of experience, and even what skill set you have. So somebody just starting out with no experience is obviously going to be paid less than an experienced technician, and somebody with a really basic skill set that still needs a lot of help and supervision is going to make less than somebody with a really advanced skill set with a high degree of mastery and really advanced skills that not everybody has. So getting into the details, this is a breakdown of where I started, what I was doing, what I was making at the time, and how I got my raises. My first paid job with animals was in 2010 when I was doing my undergraduate degree at UC Davis. I got a job as a husbandry technician at a genetics lab. My job duties did not change in the 4 years that I worked there. I cleaned kennels, I cleaned litter boxes, I fed cats, and that was about it. I started making minimum wage in California, which I think was $7 an hour at the time. I did it for 4 years and I made $7.25 by the time I stopped that job. I worked multiple jobs to make ends meet and took out a lot of student loan debt. After I graduated and started pursuing my master's, I worked as a teaching assistant for a little while and eventually moved to Jefferson City, Missouri. When I was done with school and decided I didn't want to stay in research anymore, I got a job at a local GP where I was a veterinary assistant. I was doing very basic skills. I was restraining for exams, running blood work, restraining for vaccines, running anesthesia, which was really just writing down vitals while the veterinarian that was doing the procedure told me what to do and didn't really tell me why. And I did a tiny bit of phlebotomy, just very basic blood draws for just annual blood work. At this job, I was making slightly over minimum wage. I think I was making around $8 an hour. A few months later, I decided to move to Salt Lake City, applied to a couple of general practices, asking for $10 an hour. I think I asked for $9 or $10 an hour. I got accepted at a small general practice that only had a couple of doctors, and they offered me $11 an hour with benefits. Dobby! I was completely stoked to be making more than $10 an hour. At this clinic, I did a lot more hands-on and actual technician stuff as opposed to just assistant tasks. So I started monitoring sedated procedures, doing a lot more anesthesia and kind of learning to understand what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I did a lot more phlebotomy, a lot more catheter placements. I learned to intubate patients. This was really my first true technician job. Part of the way through working there, I got a substantial raise. I want to say it was around $2 an hour. So I think I was making around $13 an hour when I quit that job a year later. At that point, I had decided that I wanted to move into emergency specialty medicine, and there was a Blue Pearl pretty much around the corner from my house that had an ad saying they were paying $15 an hour for licensed technicians, which I was not at the time. I applied and I really thought that I was not going to get accepted because I wasn't licensed, but after going through the interview, they really didn't care because again, in Utah at that time, there was no licensing, and they offered me $15 an hour. So I started in radiology. I was learning to run CTs, restraining for ultrasounds, and that's where my real love of ultrasonography began. Even though I really liked imaging, I still found myself running into the ER and the ICU anytime something exciting was happening, and I pretty quickly moved over into ER ICU full-time. Over the next couple of years, I worked really hard to learn anything and everything that I could. I spent every hour there learning, trying to do new procedures, trying to learn new skills, reading in my own time, asking questions, being, I'm sure, truly irritating to some of the DVMs that I was working with because I asked so many questions. I worked really hard on my leveling packets and made a constant effort every day to improve myself and to do more. The key here is that I was doing more before I was getting paid more because I was building value in myself as an employee. In 2018, I was finally at the point that I had enough experience to be able to take the VT&E. So after I did and I passed and I got licensed in the state of Wisconsin, oh my God. After I got licensed, I got another $1 hour raise, and eventually I was making over $20 an hour. And again, totally stoked to break that barrier. Every time I got any amount of raise, I was just so happy to be moving forward and to be progressing. After getting licensed, I already knew that I was going to be working towards my VTS immediately. So I continued trying to learn, trying to progress, always asking questions, always asking for opportunities. Can I place that catheter? Can I intubate this patient? Can I monitor this anesthesia? Can you teach me to do the central line? Always asking to progress. Even asking to stay late for opportunities to learn. I got more merit raises, usually always the maximum amount that they were offering that year because I was a good employee and because, again, I was building value in myself. I became a supervisor and got another $1 an hour raise. And then at one point, Blue Pearl did a company-wide leveling raise where they evaluated how their pay scales were in their company and their different regions and valued whether that was competitive or not. And if it wasn't, they gave everybody raises, and I was among one of those people. I think I got maybe $1 an hour at that time. So now we're around 2020, and I think I'm making around $28 an hour. More merit raises and hard work got me up past the barrier of $30 an hour finally. I got my VTS in 2021 and got a couple dollars an hour raise for that. At this point, with all of the leveling raises, merit raises, I think I was making somewhere around $33 an hour. At that point, I could do a thoracocentesis and abdominocentesis completely independently. I could do in-house cytologies, bone marrows, anesthetize very critical patients. I was extremely flexible. I picked up extra hours. I was a good employee. I was always on time. I didn't complain about having to work holidays or weekends. I could efficiently work in any department in my hospital. Again, I had built lots of value in myself. Fast forward to Blue Pearl wasn't doing very well in my community, and there was a pretty big mass exit of doctors and technicians. Blue Pearl gave us another $1 an hour raise as part of an enticement package to get people to stay. And I stayed for a while with that, but eventually when my last criticalist left and I really wanted to continue progressing and not stagnate, I applied to MedVet. Honestly, at that time, MedVet did not make me a good offer. I think it was somewhere in like to mid to high 20s, and I refused it because I didn't think that I could take that kind of step backwards. It felt like I was losing progress. So at that time, I started working for a small radiology company in my area, and I stayed there for a couple of months, and eventually MedVet had some staffing issues, and they reached out to me again and made me a slightly better offer. At that point, I was really ready to be back in critical care. I had really missed it, and I took their offer even though it was still less than I had been making at Blue Pearl. Fast forward 2 years to now, I don't get leveling raises anymore because my VTS, I've pretty much leveled out. Although I still set personal goals for myself and still try to make sure that I'm progressing. I still get merit raises, which from my experience working in these big corporations, merit raises are usually only about 3 to 5% annually, and they're dependent upon how you performed as an employee and how the company did the previous year. So that's the path that took me from making so little I couldn't afford to pay for my car insurance to actually making a livable wage as a veterinary nurse. But the industry has changed a lot in that time period, from offering technicians with little experience $10 an hour to looking at how the industry is now, offering technicians with little to no experience in the high teens, maybe even low 20s, depending on their background. That is huge progression. And I honestly think that that progression is going to continue. Companies have learned the value of their nursing staff. There are research articles showing that the average technician can bring in $220,000 to their company annually. So with companies learning the value of their support staff, learning that having experienced technicians that want to stay with their company means their doctors can see more patients and be more efficient and therefore bring in more revenue for the company themselves, our value is just getting more and more recognized. So I want to spend a couple of minutes looking at average technician wage across the US. Back in 2021, an Excel document kind of started making its way around the veterinary social media pages. And basically this Excel document was asking technicians to put in the wage that they started at, how long they had worked, and their current wage, and then also list what their experience was, whether they were working in GP, specialty, academia, etc. This document got a lot of popularity and there was a lot of good data collected from it. So looking at this, you can see here that the average wage for Utah, again in 2021, was listed at $18.29 an hour. And things have progressed a little bit since then, so I think it's a pretty safe bet to say it's even more now. Back in 2021, there was also an article published in Today's Veterinary Business that was looking at pay scales from a company called VEG. If you don't know, VEG is the Veterinary Emergency Group, and they're a very forward group in that they are raising the bar for technician wages. They're recognizing the value in their nursing staff and therefore paying them more. They're also very public with the wages that they're offering for their staff. So this article listed a veterinary technician specialist pay range as going up to $48.50 an hour. So doing some quick math, $48.50 an hour at 40 hours a week over 52 weeks a year, that is up to $100,880 annually. Now that is way more than I am making right now, but that is an amazing pay scale for someone with good experience. Comparing that to this document, you can actually see that there's a couple of people that have listed their wages as being even higher than that. There's a CVT from Rhode Island who listed her wage as $57.69 an hour with 22 years of experience. And then here is an RVT from California with 16 years of experience making $62 an hour. So in short, can a veterinary technician make more than $100,000 a year? It looks like not only they can, but there's some people out there that are. I know, I understand that this is not going to be the average wage for a veterinary technician, but the point here is that average wages are increasing every year as we get more recognition and as we build value in ourselves. So the big question, how? How do we achieve this? How do we get paid enough that we can pay our bills? Well, as you've heard me saying throughout this entire video, build value. Tell your clinic why you are worth more and prove to yourself why you are worth more. The reason I was able to raise my wage by over $20 an hour in my time at Blue Pearl is because I worked hard every day. I learned, I progressed, I educated myself. I made my clinic value me. I not only learned advanced procedures, but I mastered them to a degree in which my clinic, my clinicians, my coworkers, and my clients trusted me. I made my doctors more efficient by helping them with their procedures, and therefore I made my clinic more money. You also need to be an above average employee. If you're the type of person who calls out a lot, who's late a lot, asks to leave early, is stagnant, is not making an effort to progress, you're not building value in yourself. You're not giving your clinic a reason to pay you more. So for those of you who are thinking of getting into the field, in the field, trying to figure out how to make more, what do I do to advance? This is your layout. Work hard, build value in yourself, show yourself and everyone around you that you are worth more. To rub on that. Little general practice. Dummy, don't chase her. You just like being in the camera, don't you? You love it. Okay, you're in the way. You're purring so hard.